she is.
Hey, Beth.
Okay.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with the forum. My name is Andrew Claxton, and I have a little confession to make. This is actually the first time I've attended the forum. That's how they rope you in. They're like, "Hey, can you participate?" So, help me welcome this morning Beth Roalstad. She is with Homeward Pikes Peak. And today she's going to be talking about trauma-informed care. Homeward Pikes Peak provides, I'm using a little cheat sheet, provides supportive services and addictions treatment for individuals who have high levels of adverse childhood effects, as well as experiencing violence and abuse as adults. So I'm sure we're all looking forward to it. Thank you. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you, Andrew. For such a heavy topic, I'm impressed that there are so many people here. Thank you. Yes, my name is Beth Roalstad, and I'm a sometimes member of First Congregational Church, and it's a nice opportunity to be with you today. I think I've spoken with you about Homeward Pikes Peak services 3 or 4 years ago, so it's nice to come back and to do a little bit of a deeper dive. Just a little bit about me. I've lived here in Colorado Springs about 17 years, and I've been in Colorado 25 years. It's the longest place I've ever lived anywhere because I was a child of an Air Force officer and moved around quite a bit as a young person. So my dad went to the academy and had a big life, and I followed him around for a long time. But as things happen, I came back to Colorado Springs in 2006. So it's a lovely place to call home. I've been with Homeward Pikes Peak for 6 years as their executive director, and I am a social worker, though I'm not a clinical social worker. So I've been in this work for 23 years, but I don't sit with people in the counseling role. I'm more in the program management, program development, and a lot of fundraising. So thank you for inviting me today. So what does Homeward Pikes Peak do in this community? We empower individuals and families to access stable housing, increase mental health, increase recovery, and achieve economic stability. We do that through a variety of programs, and these are our building blocks. We look at the solutions around homelessness and people with very low income in 3 ways: housing, treatment, and recovery. And for recovery, we really mean recovery from addictions, but also the recovery from mental illness as well. So we have a variety of core programs: clinical services and the outpatient treatment style, street outreach, housing first for adults with a dual diagnosis, specialized veterans housing first, Project Detour, which is a sober living program for women who are pregnant and parenting and women who are unaccompanied not with their children. We also have the Harbor House Recovery Home, which is a sober living home for men only. And then we're just about to open the Bloom House Residential Treatment Center for pregnant and parenting women. And then the Commons Supportive Housing Apartment Building, which opens actually next week. Yeah, it's a big lift. Thank you. Thanks. So this is our timeline in the community. It's probably hard to read, but I just want to establish that Homeward Pikes Peak has been a community solution that this community created in 2002. There was a blue ribbon panel convened by the mayor and elected officials in 1998, where the community decided that there's something needed to be done about the observation that there was homelessness happening in El Paso County. So they created the Southern Colorado Task Force on Homelessness. It convened for over 2 years. It had meetings around the community. They used the El Pomar Foundation's Penrose House quite a bit. They had volunteers, they had fellows from El Pomar help sustain the work. And then one of the outcomes of the Southern Colorado Task Force on Homelessness was the request, the call for an organization to be formed to do ongoing advocacy and convening on the topic of homelessness. Thus, Homeward Pikes Peak was born with an original grant from the El Pomar Foundation, and its first office space and home was at Pikes Peak United Way. And we've been doing that work now since 2002. And you'll see in about 2007, we began delivering direct services. And some of that was an observation that there was not enough being done, not enough was being created in the community to address the needs and the rising number of homelessness. During this time, you may remember the American Red Cross first started an emergency shelter for homelessness. Now the site is being managed by the Salvation Army, and it's called the R.J. Montgomery Emergency Shelter. And then over time, the Springs Rescue Mission started the New Life program, which is a men's treatment, addictions treatment program. But slowly, programming started to emerge in our community, and our board of directors wanted to increase the number of housing solutions, so we began receiving vouchers from the HUD, from a process, a competitive grant application, and we began delivering direct services. So that was when we started in 2007 actually being a service provider. We coordinated the Pikes Peak Continuum Care for about 5 years, and then that responsibility transitioned to Pikes Peak United Way, and then it also transitioned in 2018, once again, and it's managed by Community Health Partnership. And the Pikes Peak Continuum of Care plays a significant role in the community because it's the pathway that our community receives federal funding to serve the community to address homelessness through the provision of supportive housing and rapid rehousing and transitional housing. So our community receives about $2.7 million from the federal government annually, and there's a competitive application process for those grants to be given out, of which Homeward Pikes Peak has 3 contracts with HUD to do that work. So you'll see that over time, we slowly added programs to meet certain needs with different subpopulations. And the reason they happen over time is you have to build capacity, you have to raise funds, you have to find a site to do the work. So it's been a building block process for us to get to where we are today with almost 8 distinct programs. So I'm going to share with you a short video, because they always say picture's worth 1,000 words. So Rob's going to help me play this video.
Home is being true to yourself. Home is healthy relationships. Home is peace of mind and security. Home is a destination. The journey to get home isn't always clear, but Homeward Pikes Peak provides support and resources to help people find their way home.
They gave me a chance to get my life together and taught me how to live life on life's terms.
We recognize that every person has a story, and every person deserves a chance. We know a stable roof over one's head increases chances of recovery.
Housing is the most basic need, and without housing, people can't really function properly as far as maintaining their mental health, maintaining or trying to focus on their sobriety, or even trying to find employment.
Housing our clients first provides stability. It allows individuals to begin to trust themselves and relearn healthy habits.
I am doing great. My kids are doing great. We feel safe. We feel happy. We are more stable. I know we went through a lot of emotions. We went through a lot of things as, hopping from place to place and not knowing what's going to happen next. We wake up every day. We have our routine. I feel safe and comfortable to be able to call up, our place home.
To support the journey, Homeward Pikes Peak provides a case manager to every client. Case managers are the core of our organization. An advocate, a coach, a guide through the ups and downs of life.
The honesty and the folks coming in with this, especially your caseworkers, right? They contact you once a week, they come see you, there's always a touch.
Everyone deserves a chance. Everyone is a human. Everyone is a person, and they deserve to be treated as such. No one is less than or better than, another. And we meet people where they are, no matter where they are in their life. It's not us or anyone else to judge an individual by where they are or what walks of life they've walked. So we are here to walk alongside anyone who wants to walk alongside us.
They really believe in their clients, and they focus on getting their clients to believe in themselves.
In the healing process, the Homeward Pikes Peak Clinic supports people through individual and group counseling. Our team of licensed counselors works with clients through the challenges of life and substance misuse.
And we are trauma informed, so we acknowledge and recognize that there's multiple things going on for folks. We also think a lot about co-occurring stuff, so substance use and mental health often exist together.
I used all the services they offered. I did all the treatments. I did the mother's group, the therapy, and the drug treatment, the year-long drug treatment. I chose to stay with them because they're such good people. And so I finished those treatments, and of course I was in the housing program the whole time, and I just pretty much got to know the whole staff through there and just stayed in one place.
And when our clients are successful, it's an opportunity to celebrate.
What you do for us is just absolutely amazing. You know, alcohol and drug abuse and recovery, it's not 100%. It's not, a lot of people don't make it, but I feel like I'm on my way, and if it wasn't for you folks, I don't know where I'd be right now. I honestly don't.
Homeward Pikes Peak has been a part of the community for over 20 years.
For Homeward Pikes Peak, our role in ending homelessness is to step back and look at what are some of the causes and reasons that people become homeless. Affordable housing is one of those reasons. Lack of access to healthcare and behavioral health care can lead someone to having all these personal trauma and trouble where they're unable to hold down a job and then pay for rent or mortgage.
Our mission is to empower individuals and families to seek a more stable life. We are proud to walk with the Pikes Peak region on a journey of recovery and bringing people home.
Homeward Pikes Peak brought me home.
Thank you for bringing us homeward.
Homeward Pikes Peak brought me home.
Thank you for bringing me home.
Your contributions are vital to our success. Visit our website to donate today.
Let's try this one more time. Sorry, folks. No, it's not wanting to cooperate right now. Hey, we're back.
Fantastic. I hope you like this beautiful picture. My brother took that actually when he came to visit from New York. Thanks for watching that video. I didn't mean for you to listen to the fundraising pitch because that's not why we're here today. So I wanted to lay the table for what the work is that we do, and then slowly we're going to dive down into the trauma work that we do with our clients who are exiting homelessness. So these are the common themes of our clients that we're experiencing. Trauma happens early in childhood. Often, I would say 70% of everyone we work with has a co-occurring illness of addictions and mental illness. They have limited education and very erratic work history. They've been homeless for 12 months or more, or 12 months over the last 3 years. They have economic instability, poor credit, garnishments, and evictions on their record, which means they have a very poor credit, which makes them very hard to house in the market we have today. And they have a limited personal safety net of friends and family who can assist them. So I want to pause a minute and ask you to think of, what does trauma mean for you? Trauma is a pretty loaded word. We could use another word like challenges, issues, setbacks. We've all had them. Something has happened in our life that's caused us to pause and ask for help. I wonder if anyone wants to throw out a word that they could think of for that when they hear the word trauma, what it makes you think of. Loss. Pain. Injury. Great. Fear. Confusion. Great. Thanks. Those are all great words. Has anyone here, if you could have a brief show of hands, are you familiar with the Adverse Childhood Effects Survey? Okay, about 10% of the room. So adverse childhood effects are things that happen in your life prior to 18 years of age. And there was a landmark study done by the Kaiser Permanente organization in California in the late 1990s, where they have this HMO, they have a health clinic group. They surveyed 17,000 individuals and asked them 10 questions. They're like multi-part questions, but they asked, what happened to your life previous to the age of 18? Because they're looking for the indicator of how that might affect their health in the long term. So I'm going to throw up these questions in two parts and just read them over. It'll take a couple of minutes. And think about this for yourself, but then think of people you know who are challenged, who have had maybe an erratic life history, and where you might see a correlation to this. Ready for me to move on? Okay. Here's the next half. Okay, so pretty heavy questions, aren't they? Pretty heavy topics. So we do this survey with our clients, but we do them in a safe setting with a trained case manager or a therapist, because you don't know what going through these questions might unlock for that person in front of you. So we want to be careful when we're doing this survey, but it also gives us a huge amount of information to work with our clients. One of the approaches that Homeward Pikes Peak uses in this trauma-informed care approach is not to ask about that person in front of me, what's wrong with them? It's to ask what's happened to them, what's happened to this person. Because until we understand what challenges that have happened early in their life, we may not know the best interventions to help them today. So this is why this tool is so helpful. The statistics up on the screen are, I think, pretty remarkable if we think about the general population in the US today, or even the folks here at First Congo. Probably 2/3 of this group has had at least one adverse childhood effect. In the study that Kaiser did, 1 in 5 of the participants had 3 or more of these adverse childhood effects. And then what we know about when you have adverse childhood effects is that they usually experience 1 or more types of trauma. That rarely it's just a single type of trauma. So there could include sexual abuse, verbal abuse, but you saw through the questions that there's a lot more to it than that. You know, the lack of adequate food, the lack of housing stability, being not cared for or encouraged to participate in school or to participate in community. All of these will rack up to form traumas for an individual. When we do this study with our own clients, we are seeing an average of 7 on the ACE score. So we're working with, about 250 people deeply through case management services, either in outpatient addictions counseling or through our housing programs. And then another 250 to 300 deeply through street outreach. The average ACE score is 7. That's really high. So when you think about, you've probably read the newspaper articles around the numbers of people experiencing homelessness here in Colorado Springs. The number that the news likes to use is about 1,500. Let's think about that 1,500 if at least 1 in 5 have 3 or more, but if they're more like the Homeward Pikes Peak clients that have an average score of 7, you might understand why they're engaging in services at a low level, why they look mentally disturbed when they're walking on our streets and in our parks, why they are resistant to use some of the emergency services that are available to them. They're not able to function like you and I and have a cause and effect, synapse in the brain that if I do this, this is going to happen. If I go here, I'm going to be successful. There's so many steps in between that we're trying to intervene at to help them get to the outcome that we desire. But they're not seeing that cause and effect opportunity like we might see. Make sure you can see that okay. So how does adverse childhood experiences affect your life? So this diagram really illustrates that these issues can happen actually even pre-conception and carry on through death. Some of you have probably heard the research that infants in utero or babies in utero can feel the stress and trauma that their mother is experiencing. So that genetic information is being passed on to them in utero, and then when they're born, they can have these stimulating factors in their body that they're hard to soothe and calm. And that's even without drugs and alcohol being layered on top of that woman during pregnancy. So we want to work very carefully with pregnant women so that we can help reduce those stressors and remove them from traumatic places so that they can get the help they need so they can have the healthiest birth possible. And then, of course, if there are addictions, we want to intervene on that even more so. So what can happen? How does these ACE scores affect somebody in their life? A person with a high ACE score will have a higher incidence of injury. For example, brain injury, closed head trauma, fractures, burns. Mental health, the highest incidence of mental illness for those with high ACE scores are depression, anxiety, PTSD, and then often resulting in suicide. The maternal health impacts of this, there can be unintended pregnancy, complications in pregnancy, fetal malhealth, or even death. Infectious diseases are on the rise, HIV and STDs. Chronic disease can increase with high ACE scores, so it increases incidence of cancer and diabetes. Also could lead to increased risky behaviors, alcohol and drug use or unsafe sex. And then ultimately, limited opportunities for your future. So poor education outcomes, low employment, and then low income. So we want to help reduce the impact of these adverse childhood experiences on individuals, but we also want to know what we can do. Sometimes when I've talked about this issue, this is a study for individuals before 18. So many of you might be thinking, well, what do we do for the children of today? It would be great if a lot of our prevention activities, we have homelessness over here, but there's a whole life before someone ends up being homeless. So our prevention activities are critical. You've probably heard of the wonderful programs like CPCD and Early Head Start and Regular Head Start. First visitor programs, which is sending nurses into the home of Medicaid families so that they can have home health visits and parenting skills in the home. Those are just two examples. There are many great examples of prevention activities that get to these issues very early so we can have more eyes on at-risk families to reduce the impact on these children in the long run. So I want to tell you a story about Terry. You saw him in the video. Terry is a veteran, and this is him housed last April. Terry spent 10 years living in his truck. So he was housed at 72. He'd been living in his truck since around the age of 60, driving around the West, trying to find safe places, trying to restart life. Terry had an alcohol problem, but his biggest problem was some critical health issues that he never could address because of his homeless status. He needed a life-saving surgery that he had been delaying because he was told that he needed a stable housing environment to heal from the surgery and recuperate. So our street outreach team met him in about November of 2021. So this is during the pandemic. He was living in his truck. He found an outreach worker, and thankfully, because he has this acute health issue, we had a hotel voucher program at the time that was funded by the state of Colorado during the pandemic. And we were able to put him in a motel and give him weekly case management, and actually turned out to be more because we were assisting with getting people food. So about every 2 days, we were delivering groceries to Terry and about 4 other people who are living in a motel. So Terry was able to start going to the VA for his health care and plan that surgery, but he wanted to delay it until he was housed in his own apartment. The challenge, like we explained earlier, is that if you've experienced homelessness, there's like an 80% chance that you've had a criminal involvement, and so that you have an arrest record. Often felonies are involved, and felonies show up on your background checks. Every apartment for rent in Colorado Springs runs 2 things right now: a criminal background check and a credit check. So Terry had a felony on his record, and he had extremely poor credit because he'd been very low income before he became homeless, even though he was a United States veteran. And he had, that admirable start to his adult life. He was still homeless here at 62. It took us 5 months to find an apartment that would accept Terry. And he had a guaranteed HUD voucher. We could guarantee an apartment that we would pay double security deposit, we would pay every single month, and he had a case manager who would come to his house every single week. But in this housing market, that doesn't impress property management companies. They're only driven by one thing, and it's the dollar bill. So we had a lot of challenges. Finally, we got successful, and Terry moved in, and we were shocked at his art collection that he unpacked from his pickup truck. So these are all the things that he'd been carting around for a decade, and he was so proud, and I've seen these in person. They're quite lovely. I mean, there's not any Rembrandts there, but they're beautiful and they're meaningful to him, and now he is safe. He's had his surgery, he's recovered from cancer, and he's thriving at 73 in permanent supportive housing, which means that he will be able to live the rest of his life in a safe, stable place with our support for case management. So this is another young woman I want to tell you about, Rhiannon, and you saw her briefly in the video. And honestly, Rhiannon's story is very special to me. And for many of you, or some of you know me, and I've been a social worker in this town for a long time, and I've had a couple different jobs, and I have a soft spot for women. So it was November of 2016, I did a police ride-along with the homeless outreach team the day before Thanksgiving. And it was a coldish November winter day. And I was out there for 10 hours. And when we had a stop, we were driving down the Santa Fe Trail under one of the bridges. It's kind of a typical story. I met somebody under a bridge. It's 100% true. So Rhiannon was camping under a bridge. We were there early-ish, 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and the police said to me, "Hey, Beth, this is one of our tough nuts to crack. Can you go over and talk to her?" She didn't know me from Adam. She was strung out on meth, and she was visibly tired. She'd been, sleeping on the ground all night long. I gave her my business card and I said, when you're ready to talk, we'll be there. We have clinicians trained to work specifically with women and trauma. Please contact me. It was a brief interaction, but it left an indelible mark on me. 4 months later, we started a street outreach program where I had an outreach worker riding along with the police 4 days a week. The next thing that happened that was remarkable is Rhiannon got pregnant sometime during that year, and she went to one of our friends at Westside Cares, and she was looking for help in August of 2018. She had just given birth to a little baby who was in the NICU at Memorial Central, and she couldn't go home with her baby until she had a place to live, and she was in treatment. Thankfully, someone at Westside Cares called my outreach worker. My outreach worker drove straight over there and talked to her. They did this required survey, which is, we lovingly call it the housing survey, but it's actually called the VI-SPDAT, the Vulnerability Index and Service Provision Data Analysis Tool. And yeah, you can see how housing survey is a little better. It's a HUD form, so it has a long government name. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to go through this interview. And really what it's supposed to do is understand these individuals' challenges and barriers and rank them against everybody else here in Colorado Springs on a by name list who's more vulnerable. That's the process at which we house people in this community. So Rhiannon did that interview with outreach worker Jansen, and but better yet, Jansen brought her to our office because Rhiannon told her that she would not be able to bring her child home from the hospital unless she had a place to live, and she was in treatment. So Rhiannon arrived at our office. Our counseling team swooped in. They did their intake and assessment to, kind of see how severe her addictions were. And thankfully, this woman had stopped using drugs cold turkey when she found out she was pregnant, which is pretty rare. But thankfully she did. Her baby was born with the most minor effects of drugs, and because the mom still had some in her system. But he did have a weak lung capacity, so he was on oxygen. So what we were able to do is use another partner agency called Ascending to Health Respite Care, and they had a respite care program where they were using motel vouchers where medical staff would go in and check on the family or the individual. So you see collaboration in all of this, which is another theme I want to share with you, that this homeless solutions are all about collaboration between organizations. So Rhiannon got into a hotel. Ascending to Health started sending a nurse to visit her. She was coming to Homeward Pikes Peak to have counseling services 3 days a week. She mentioned in the video she used every service we had. Another barrier was durable medical goods. Oxygen tank for her son. They wouldn't deliver to the hotel. So they delivered to our office, and then we took her oxygen tanks to the hotel for the baby. The baby came to our office every time she had treatment. So we all got to hang out with him and make sure he was okay and doing well. He is thriving. He is the most rambunctious little 4-year-old, like 5-year-old that I know right now. He runs around. It's just so great to see him. So Rhiannon also, because she had that chronic, so should back up about Rhiannon. Rhiannon was kicked out of her house at 13 years old by her mother, who is still an addict on the west side. Rhiannon has a younger sister who's also a homeless woman who got a spot to live at Greenway Flats at Springs Rescue Mission. Rhiannon's was a little bit more challenged than her sister, so she was outside longer. But Rhiannon got into our housing program, our dual diagnosis Housing First program, while she was a clinical client. And so she was in treatment and housed, and she received psychiatric treatment for Diversus Health. Again, another collaboration. So now she's living in our program, still doing really well. She dropped out of school at 13. She hasn't gone back. That's something that we're trying to work on, help her build skills so that she can become employed. Right now, she's not employed. She probably is still in treatment 2 significant blocks of time per week, and her child is about to enter school. These are great milestones and outcomes for this individual, and I think there's more in her future, but right now we're celebrating where she is. So, trauma-informed care. In my stories with Terry and Rhiannon, I think you heard some of our approach and what Homeward Pikes Peak does to assist those who we know have had significant trauma. One of them is this low barrier access to services. So what that means, if you contact our office, we try to get you in for an intake or an interview within 24 hours, often on the same day. We feel this is a high value. It shows that we are fully engaged with the individual, and we want to support them when they're ready to ask for help, which is really important. Our setting for our services. If anyone's ever visited our office, you're gonna know that it's a little funky and homey. And I mean homey in the best way, but it doesn't look corporate. It doesn't look like a hospital. It doesn't look like an institution. We're in a 45-year-old office building east of Union on Bijou Street, and it is perfect for us. I'm really dressed up today for like the Homeward Pikes Peak, wardrobe. I probably am always the most dressy person because I'm in the community a lot. But our staff, we have standards, but we are really approachable. No one's sitting down with someone, all stuffed up in their business suit or tie or, fancy dress. That's not going to build rapport with someone who slept outside under a tree or under a bridge. We also offer food and beverages right away. When someone comes in, it's often one of the first questions we ask is, have you eaten today? Now, we don't have a catering service. We don't have a smorgasbord. We have granola bars, water, fruit, maybe an instant cup of soup. But you can't sit down and have a case management appointment or a counseling appointment if you're starving. Just like, we have these programs in our schools for our children. You can't sit down and learn if your tummy is grumbling. Same thing with adults. So that's a really important point for us. And just the atmosphere. We work really hard at making our offices cozy and inviting and well lit. The office spaces have multiple chairs and seats, different widths, different heights off the floor. All of these things are intentional so that someone can feel comfortable when they walk in. There's also, the client gets to choose their place to sit first. And if you'll notice, they're going to choose the position of a chair where they can see the door. They're going to want to know safety, that they have a path to exit first. Now, our counselors are also aware of this, and they also need a safety zone for them because things happen and, everyone needs to be safe. So, while I wish we had designed our office building with every room having 2 exits, we have 2 of those in the whole office. But, we can still work around people's safety with that awareness in mind. And then, again, I've said the non-institutional, non-clinical, it's really important to us to feel engaged and welcoming. And then our staff are also trained in this trauma work from the very beginning. We get it in our formal schooling, but also we reiterate it every single year. We're having additional trainings to understand trauma. We read books on it. We watch movies together on it. It's really important for us. And then we do as much as we can one-on-one to build safety and rapport with the client. I see I'm talking too much, huh, Rob? Okay, I can't believe it's already 11:55. So this is probably something you've seen before, or at least the concept of fight, flight, or freeze, alliteration. This is a frequent response for people who have experienced trauma. You've maybe even heard of lizard brain before, especially if you've been working with teenagers or little kiddos. When you are extremely stressed, some people use the word triggered, you have a natural parasympathetic response, fight, flight, or freeze. This is how it might look. These are examples of words that you might see these behaviors in someone who's in front of you. Numbing, and I'm going to be honest, numbing was one of the things that I did when I am totally overwhelmed with work or life. I'm going to sit down, watch a couple of hours of Netflix, and I'm going to numb out and relax. You know, we do these things just in every day, but when they're happening on the larger scale with our clients, you know, it can really remove them from taking any action towards positive things. So, does it look? With fighting, it can be frustration, explosiveness, aggressive behavior, aggressive language, resisting, acting out, or just, you know, saying no, very basic. Flight, how does that show up? Distractible, clowning around, always joking and never being able to have a serious conversation or take a topic seriously. Escaping, finding something else to do all the time instead of going to your appointments or making progress on your goals. Simply just being bored, laying around, not doing anything. And the freeze can look kind of different too. Could whiny, tearful, clingy, reluctant to separate or to try new things, withdrawing, or always hiding behind the phrase, I can't, I won't, things like that. When our staff works with someone, we're using a strategy called motivational interviewing. You may have heard of this tactic. It is a way of coaching the individual through them owning what they can do. What small steps can they take to work towards a goal that they have helped establish? Every client we work with has an individual service plan or an individual treatment plan that is comprised by that individual, not the clinician or the case manager. So when we see these behaviors pop up, we're going to use our tools at our disposal and talk them through a baby step towards something that they've already identified that they want to do. So that's basically how we do our trauma-informed approach. So, share you with some positive things. So the Commons is the apartment building I told you about. It is 50-unit apartment building, brand new, finished. It's located near Academy and Uinta. If you know the Applebee's at Academy and Galley, we're just half a block north of that. And as I said, we're moving in residence next week. The interesting thing about this project is that I started working on it in 2018. So here we are, 5 years later, and we're about to move clients in. And when people say, we just need to build more affordable housing, that's the solution. It sure is, but be patient because it could take 4 or 5 years. Thankfully, the land is big enough that we can build a second apartment building. So we will be applying to the state of Colorado for a second low-income housing tax credit award to construct an additional 69-unit apartment building that will adjoin the first building. What's unique about the Commons is that it will address family homelessness. There are 25 apartments that are 2 or 3 bedrooms so that we can help homeless families. And we also have the flexibility to define homeless families outside of the context of chronic homelessness. So homeless families could be at risk of homelessness, or they just got kicked out last month and they've been sleeping on relatives' or friends' couches and they need a place to go. That's really important because often families hide from organizations like mine because they're worried that their children could be removed from them. You know, a child welfare case could be opened if they're not providing for their children adequately. So being more flexible with the definition around family homelessness allows us to serve them better. Okay, the next thing is our Bloom House, and First Congo actually has been very supportive of this project, and it also, we've had a couple of delays here, but we're opening that this week, and we should have women living in this home probably by next Sunday, which thrills me to no end. So this is a very unique program. It's the first one in El Paso County that will allow women who are pregnant or have a baby to move into a housing setting where they can have intensive clinical treatment to address their addictions and mental illness. So that's it, and I would love to take your questions. I'm not a therapist, but I certainly can address many, many questions that you might have.
Do we have any questions? Anyone want to? Right, here's one from Wendy.
I have a page of them, but I think the most important one maybe for this group is your need for volunteers. And we got the little a few slides about donations, but how about non-monetary donations?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we are looking for volunteers in a couple of ways. The Street Outreach Program has an art class. We call it Enrich. And we do art therapy with clients both at the Springs Rescue Mission, and we will open a new art class at the Commons. So basically you don't have to have any artistic skill, but if you like to be around people who are drawing, painting, playing with clay, it would be wonderful to have volunteers who could come and work alongside with our staff and the clients. So you can definitely contact me and I can put you in touch with that coordinator. Then we're also looking for groups who might be willing to cook for a group of 10 to 15 people. And we don't have any formal kitchen at Homeward Pikes Peak, so the concept is if you could bring something in a crock pot that could be served to our clients. As I said, food is a really important attribute that we give to the clients so they can participate fully in programs. We offer 3 clinical groups a week at night, and it would be lovely to have an easy dinner of a soup or a stew or burritos wrapped in tinfoil that we could share with our clients. And then lastly, the Bloom House will be launching some women's volunteer opportunities where we're hoping for, I'm going to call it walking friends, where you're taking pregnant or parenting women out on a walk in the neighborhood. And this is right downtown off of Boulder and Shook's Run. So it's right down by Memorial Hospital. And so it would just be a little neighborhood walk with a pregnant gal. We all know how important it is to keep moving when we're pregnant. So something like that. So please contact me. Oh, and in kind, if you are cleaning out a house, if you are moving, if you don't need a frying pan or that crock pot or a microwave, we definitely take small household items for all of our clients that we're moving into housing. We buy them new beds and bedding, but the small kitchen and household things are so helpful. If you know of anyone who'd like to give that to us.
Any other questions? Yes, one more in the back.
Do you, or how do you coordinate with at-risk youth, like the Place or other homeless for older youth?
Yeah, great question. So I talk to the staff of the Place probably weekly. We have each other on speed dial sometimes. Our street outreach team goes out together, and also we have a monthly coordination of street outreach. So the Place has an outreach team, Homeward Pikes Peak does, and the fire department and the police. We have a once-a-month coordination meeting held at HPP, and we're talking around observations and challenges and locations in the city to do the outreach. While we serve adults officially over 18, you may know that the Place serves individuals up to about 25 years old. When they have clients age out of their programming, they refer them to us. So, a voucher got transferred in the last month where one of their youth who was in supportive housing aged out of their program, and he rolled into ours so that we could maintain stability for that individual. We have a ton of coordination with the Place.
From the standpoint of my vast age, I like to look at programs that I've seen that I know work. And one of them that I'm extremely biased in favor of is horticultural therapy.
because not only does it provide physical exercise in the out of doors, which I think is beneficial for everyone, but it also has been very successful in improving people's diets and making them more aware of it. So I just want to reiterate that there are many community gardens in Colorado Springs. One of them happens to be Catacorner from the Bloom House. I think we've made the offer that 2 faculty members at UCCS in the nursing program have volunteered to pay the plot fee for any of those women who'd be interested. But it also brings me back to the issue of context, because one of the major problems we have with that particular garden is it's adjacent to Shooks Run Trail and a drug house, which the police department have told us they've known of its existence for many years and have arrested many people who always get bailed out. So context is really important. And in the context of programs that I know that worked, I'm so fond of the resilience program that Chip and Knight started at UCCS that's proven to be incredibly effective for a wide variety of populations. And I'm wondering if you all have any interaction with that particular successful program.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We have not collaborated with the UCCS Resilience Program, though I would say that many of the themes that they have advanced are similar to what we're doing with our trauma-informed care with individuals. Related to gardening, at the Men's Sober Living House, actually G.E. Johnson interns built us 3 raised bed gardens, and for 2 years we've been doing a gardening project every year with the men in sober living, and there's nothing quite like that group who works out there and then eats their tomatoes and squash every year. It's been wonderful. And I look forward to the Bloom House ladies working with you this summer when we get that house up and running.
All right, we've got one more question right here.
How does your work relate to the Springs Rescue Mission?
Great question. So we collaborate every day. As I mentioned, the outreach team is down there doing art every Friday, but our outreach workers are going to the mission and completing the housing survey when they don't have enough staff to do it with their own visitors to the shelter. But also our street outreach team, it's one of our primary referrals, and that's what they do. They encounter people outside on the trails and in the parks, and they encourage people to utilize emergency shelter. We want individuals inside. We don't want individuals camping and living outside. Many do. They have a lot of reasons for doing it, but we're encouraging the use of shelter because it's a pathway towards other services.
All right. Well, I would just like to thank Beth Roalstad for coming to us from Homeward Pikes Peak and giving us all an opportunity to participate. So next week, folks, don't forget we have Rob Rogers, former House, he ran for House last November, and so he'll be here speaking about separation of church and state. So thank you again.